Hi, this is Blodgett from Jende Industries. Today we're going to hone a straight razor. I have a soldering razor and we're going to use the Shapton Pros this time. Now, first thing we're going to do is set the bevel. Now this is Swedish steel, so it's a little bit harder. So if you don't have a bevel, then you'll want to start with something coarse on the coarse grit stones at 120, 220, or 320. With the harder steels, 320 is better suited. For a softer steel, 220 better suited. So hard steel, soft stone, soft steel, hard stone. The coarse grit's only if there's some, you don't have a bevel at all, you've done some restorations, there's some chips, or some major work that has been done on the blade. You generally don't need the coarse grit stones, but I'm going to show you just to make sure that we have it here. So I'll start with my 320 stone. Now you can hold it in your hand, or these come with a base that they store on top of, or you can put it into one of the stone holders. For this one, actually, I will use the stone holder because it's a little bit higher here, easier to see. So, okay, so here, now there's 3 strokes that are done. These are, again, splash and go stones. Throw some water down. The first stroke, actually I'm going to hold it easier. First stroke is the most aggressive when you're just beginning here, is the circle stroke. And what this does is it cuts in very quickly to the edge. But you have crisscrossing scratches. So it's the most aggressive, but it also requires the most work to fix. So this is if you have a big chip, or you bread knifed it or something, and just you have to do some major work. So you do a set amount of circles, you work your way down the stone. You can put some pressure here. The more pressure you use, the more you got to fix later, but this is about just getting it done. All right. The second stroke is what's called a knife stroke, where you do, in this case I'm going to do an X stroke. I'm doing a rolling X on this, and you would just do the same stroke, 10 or 12 or 15 or 20 times as you would like on a knife. So this is also very aggressive. A little less aggressive than the circles, but every bit as aggressive. So you do a set amount there, and then flip it over. And this cuts faster than just doing singular strokes. All right, and then the final stroke that you would want to end with is of course, the X stroke. So these are your 3 basic strokes for setting a bevel. Circles are the most aggressive, followed by knife strokes, which are less aggressive, followed by the regular alternating X strokes, which are the least invasive. So you would do this depending on the severity of your edge, what needs to get done. Okay, when that's done, now here you can do anywhere from 100 or 200 or 300 until it gets done. I mean, that's the point here, this lowest level. Now, 320 and 220 is a bit extreme for most people, so we'll assume that you just have your regular razor that just needs some bevel setting, and the 1K is pretty much your go-to bevel setter here. That's what most people will go to. So your 1000 grit is where you're most likely going to begin, unless you have some serious work to be done. So here, we'll put it in the stone holder this time. You can start with circles on this, or you can start with a knife stroke here as well. But because we've done that already on the 320, we're going to just jump to the 1K here. Now, here, because the Pro Stones are limited in their middle amounts, I prefer to do all 3. You don't have to. You can jump to, the 1 and the 2000, which is, doubling your grits. I like to do all 3 here because they get the work done, and it really cleans up anything that was done before, and it sets you up for that 5K critical leap that we discussed earlier. So the better setup you are for the 5K, the easier it is, but you can jump and have to do more work, or you can just go through nice and easy, and so it's half a dozen of one, 6 of the other kind of deal. So today we'll jump. So I'll start with my 1K. You can do circles here if you need to really set a bevel. You can do your knife strokes. We're just going to start off with an X stroke here. So, depends on your balance here. So I'm doing a rolling X in this case because there's a little bit of a smile going on. And you just follow the water in front. If you can zoom in on that. I don't know if we have enough to see yet. but you'll see a bead of water that gets pushed out in front of the blade. And that's how you know that you're hitting the edge of the edge. If you don't see that bead, you're not hitting the edge. The water will run up onto the blade sometimes. So this is how you know you have a good bevel set. Now these stones, as you get more swarf, the Shapton stones, you want to keep them as clean as possible. The cleaner they are, the more effective they cut. That's what you want here. They don't get paste, they don't get polished, you just have the stone itself. So you can hear the aggression that's coming off of this stone. Alright, so you'll do this until your bevel is set. If you're looking under the scope, you'll see scratches that are all in the same pattern, especially if you went from circles, which will have crisscrossing, to your knife, which will have deep straight grooves, to your X stroke, which will be less invasive straight grooves. So you would do that until everything lines up under magnification. Generally 100 to 200 strokes in my book. The lighter the better. You can also switch to a skew here afterwards. I like to do that to monitor where I'm at. So if my scratches are this way and I still slightly askew, I can monitor, because sometimes those deepest scratches, they're so deep, and if you're all in the same direction, you get in like a rut. You can't tell the bottom of the deepest scratches until it's too late, until you hit the 5K. That's when you'll see them. But before that, this way, by crisscrossing it slightly, not perpendicular, but just a little bit askew, you will see the underlying depth there. So what I like to do at every level is to do 2 strokes, one straight, perpendicular to the stone, and then one slightly askew. You don't have to do that. That's just a personal thing for me. So I'll do the straight X stroke first. Again, 100 or 200 at this level, just to make sure, depending on where I'm at. Or refreshing, then 50 to 100. Then I'll switch to slightly askew, and I can see that all the lower of the previous scratches are being removed, and the new scratch pattern is being established. And this would be, again, about 100 or so, 50 to 100. And again, follow the water in front of the blade. Alright, and I think you get the idea. So we're not going to hone the razor all the way through. I'm just going to kind of touch on all the stones. You monitor under the scope, or till you get your indicators, such as a hanging hair test, or you're checking arm hair. Don't do the whole arm. One hair is enough. If it cuts, you know you're on the right path. If it doesn't, keep going. Don't do your legs, and still have fully hairy legs. So from here, we're going to jump to the 2K. Again, the typical progression is the 1K, 2K, 5K. The 1500 in between is the best of both, but it also just establishes a little bit more consistency over time. However, either way is fine. I like not to jump, but for this demo, I'll jump. So again, to start off again, now I just did a skew on the 1K. Now I'm going to start again with my regular X stroke. Now I'm holding it in my hand. Whatever way you are comfortable with is fine. I usually hold it in my hand, personally, because the table is a little bit lower than I want it to be, so I can sit in any position and kind of just have it where I want it. So you just do your X stroke again. And again, you want your stones to be flat, consistently flat. So make sure you're lapping these on a regular basis so that they are all flat, because if you have a dished 1K and your 2K isn't dished, then you have to dish your stone enough so that it hits the edge of the edge from that previous dish. So one way is to do a razor on this side and then do the next razor by flipping the stone around. This just wears more evenly, and then it's easier to lap overall. You're not wasting much. So here I'm going to do my X stroke. Again, you monitor, because you had the crisscrossing a little bit, the askew before, you'll now see the new scratch pattern from the 2K. Then when you've gotten that established, switch over to the askew again. Again, that's just me. And this really, allows you to see. You'd be surprised how deep some of those scratches are from like the 320 or the 1K. If you used anything diamond, DMTs, or atomas to set your bevel, you really see how deep they can be. And especially if you used any pressure. So here, you monitor, again, the slightly askew X's, strokes, so that you can see that you've removed the 1K scratches fully, and now you've got fully only 2K scratches there. Again, 50 to 100 strokes, I generally do about 100 plus. The more you do down here, the better. The better established that your scratches are here, the easier it will be later and the less chips you'll have. Alright, so the 2K stone's good, you get the idea. Now we're going to move on to the 5K. Now the 5K is the most important stone here in raising, honing razors. It is the critical leap. This is where you go from, what you get here is like a white noise, you get a matte finish on your edge, and it's hard to discern the deepest scratches from the finest scratches that you've done so far to the 2K. It's all kind of just, hazy, staticky. But when you hit the 5K, it suddenly becomes clear. You'll see just how deep some of those scratches were before, and then you'll end up with like a white, under the scope it'll be white finish instead of a matte finish or reds and blues, reflecting under the scope to a white finish. So this is where the most important stone is. Your 2K to 5K is where you're going to spend the most amount of time. Setting it up, spend more time, but you're also going to spend time making sure you've got it here on the 5K. So, some water. Again, starting with the regular X stroke. So I finished before with the askew, so now I'm coming back and again, I'll monitor your progress with the 5K. This may take more than 100 strokes. This can take some time depending on how well you've set it up earlier, and everything will be revealed at this level. So you would do this, again, 100 or so strokes and monitor until it is lined up, and you'll see. Once it's lined up, I personally, again, I'll switch to my askew stroke. Now, this can take a while sometimes. Depends, again, how well you've set that up and what your tolerances are. But the better you do this now, because once you pass the 5K stone, it's not going to get done. If you've got a deep gouge in your edge or a slight microchip in your edge from previous grits that you haven't cleaned up by the 5K, it's not going to get cleaned up at the higher levels. So again, another 100 or so strokes once you've done it at the regular X stroke, when you're doing the askew, then you just do about 100 or so. That's what I do. Because you know you've gotten it on the other way, now you're just making sure it's all cleaned up and establishing this layer of scratches. Okay, you get the idea? So then moving on here, you could jump to 15K for razors. I don't. I go 8K. You really don't want to skip here on the Pro Stones. There's fewer stones than the glass stones, but it is the 8K is that, the 5K is the critical leap, which sets you up for that polishing. The 8K really cleans it up enough, and you can almost shave off the 8K. It's doable. This is the accepted minimum, 8,000 or 2 micron. It's pretty much the accepted minimum for a shave. I don't necessarily recommend it. I would go off a higher end, but this is the same thing. So here you can go, generally on the 8K, you cannot do too many strokes at an 8K stone. You can go all day long. You will not overhaul. So I'll do my regular X strokes. Okay, this is a rolling X. And then when that's a stop, now if you've done well on the lower grits and you spent your time on the 5K, it really won't take that many at the 8K to establish the 8K scratches. You do have a point of diminished returns where it becomes more difficult to establish the next level's scratches because it cuts less aggressively as you move up. So you really want to be, established by their 5K. Your 8K is going to be pretty quick, and here you can get away with, 50 strokes. I still do 100 here because to me this is the final stone that does any serious work. After this, we're going to be polishing the grooves more. You run the risk of microchipping and whatnot because of that diminished returns. You'll see those deepest scratches at 5K. At 15K, they may chip out, which is not usually the case. But at that point, you don't need to do as many strokes. So here, I'll still do 50 to 100 just to make sure I've got my 8K established. And then I'll switch to my askew. And again, you can't do too many strokes at this level. You can go all day long and not overhaul it. Alright, so you get that done, and again, about 100 strokes, 50 to 100 here. Then we'll move on to the 15K. But the process, the X stroke and then the askew X stroke is the same throughout. That doesn't change. And I generally do about 100 at every level. So I'll do 200 strokes at each grit. It may be a little overkill, but it ensures everything's done right. 15K, excuse my little dirtiness. Same thing. Now here you don't need to do 100 strokes. Here you can get away with 15 or 20 or 25 strokes. I generally, now here I also won't do the regular X stroke. I'll start with my askew because the diminished return, it takes a lot longer to undo those scratches from the 15K or the 8K at the askew. So, and you've set it up just fine until there. Now you can just do the regular askew. This is generally what I do. If you want to do both, you can. It works. So here I would just do 10 or 20. Usually I'm doing 25. That's the number I shoot for. It's up to you. But here you can do too many. There's no glory in these lower grit stones, but you spend all the time on the lower grits. By the time you get up to the 15 to the 30K, you're only doing like a few strokes. So here you do like 10 to 20 to 25 strokes. You really don't need. If you're doing more than that, then you didn't set it up right. And just askew for me. All right, you get the idea. Very light, purposeful strokes. Shouldn't be slapping it down or anything. Okay. Then you move on to your 30K if you want, if you've got. It's a good stone. So I've got it, so I'll use it, and it doesn't get used enough, So 30K. Now here's where you're again going to do 10 to 20 strokes only, because you're polishing the grooves of the lower grits. You're not trying to establish 30K. You'd have to do a lot of strokes, as it just removes. It removes metal, but it removes it at such a slow pace that to do any, to establish a 30K edge is a lot more effort than to just polish the grooves of the previous grit. So again, here just askew, and I'll do it, 10 to 20 times. I'll probably do a little bit more than I should because, oh my God, I'm using my 30K and I finally get to use it. Oh man, only 10 strokes, it's over. So totally worth its weight in gold. So here, about 10 strokes. And then from here you can strop and try to shave, or you can move on to a finishing compound or leather or kangaroo or whatever. But on the stones, you've set it up to this level, which is half micron. Then you can begin your shave. All right, enjoy your shave.